All right, so we got a little bit of news-ish from someone that we don't usually hear from, Scout Goodhair. James Lipford spoke with the media yesterday, and he had some interesting things to say. Also want to get into the biggest complaint about Nick Caserio at this point in the offseason and whether or not it could be something that I want to say it's alarming, but it's something to keep an eye on, and there's potentially a larger sample size of it than anything else that we have or any concern we have about Nick Caserio. It is the Locker Room on YouTube, number one source for daily Texans digital content. I'm Landry Locker. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 Central on Sports Radio 610 and the Odyssey app. So Scout Goodhair, James Lipford, really Casario's main scout spoke yesterday, and he had some interesting things to say about just the overall draft strategy. He was asked about Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, and these are a couple of quotes that we got from good old Scout Goodhair, courtesy of Brooks Cabina. We're also going to hear about the impact DeMeco Ryans has had on the draft strategy. Put the comments in there. We'll get to those. This is an interactive thing. We are live. So I'll get to those because I like to interact with all of you folks. Let's start with James Lipford on Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. And I actually want to ask you guys a question about this. This was the quote courtesy of Brooks Cabina, Sports Radio 610 Insider, and the Houston Chronicle. This is from Lipford being asked about Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. Quote, at the end of the day, they're both productive players. They both shined in big games. Those are guys that check a production box. They're both good dudes. I've talked to both guys, and I like both. Close quote. My question is this, because I don't disagree with Scout Goodhair on those two guys. But my question is this. Is it possible to like both of those guys the same? Like whether you're a Bryce guy, whether you're a CJ guy, and I'm not even trying to have that debate. We've been having that debate all effing year. Really since last year. We've been having that debate. So we can save that. We can have it again. We got less than 6 weeks till the draft, and we'll be able to have that discussion. But is it possible to really like both of those guys? Given how different they are, there's some stuff that CJ might do better than Bryce. There's some stuff that Bryce might do better than CJ, but is it possible to like both of those guys the same? Furthermore, and I want to ask, I asked Sean Pendergast, who's going to have Nick Caserio on Monday on the Odyssey app. How do general managers or scouts look at quarterbacks compared to other positions when it comes to two options? Because if you're looking at wide receivers or you're looking at tackles or you're looking at guards or you're looking at corners, I think you can say without hesitation and without, negatively or not even negatively, without impacting your football game teams too significantly, you can say, well, we like both of these guys. If one of these guys comes to falls to us, then we'll be okay with them. Just like the Jets did last year with Sauce Gardner, and it worked out. They got a first-team All-Pro. If the Texans would have taken Sauce, they would have taken Stingley, and they probably would have been fine with it. But when it comes to quarterback, let's say there is a drop-off. Is it, given how long you have to commit to these guys, given the fact you can't really hide them, do you look at that the same way? I'm intrigued to hear what Nick Caserio has to say about that, because I just don't see how it's possible to like them both the same. I mean, maybe you can like them, but if you're comparing those two guys, I don't see it's possible. Some of y'all disagree with that. I just don't. I find it hard to believe that they're gonna like both of those guys and not like one significantly more. They might settle, but as far as actually liking, I just don't think that. George Ochoa says he could tackle Bryce. I doubt that. Um, I think he's probably shook people a little bit bigger than George Ochoa. Now I don't know how big George Ochoa is, but I've seen Bryce shake guys that are pretty huge. Uh, Unless you're just pretty huge, I doubt that. Vincent, I'm in love with CJ and Bryce. Um, so that's cool. Song said, can let the combine sway your decision, trust the tape. Yeah, I mean, you can trust the tape, and you can check out the combine. I don't see how you can like both of these guys the same, but we'll see what happens. Um, Tubby says Anthony Richardson all the way, which brings us to the next quote from Scout Goodhair, being asked about quarterbacks and evaluating guys at the combine versus their tape. I'll always go back to the tape. This is Scout Goodhair. What I can control is evaluating how a guy played. Ultimately, when there's a helmet on their head and shoulder pads on their shoulder, that will always be king. Close quote from Brooks Cabina of the Houston Chronicle. Anthony Richardson does not have good tape. He has amazing highlights, but he does not have good tape. I don't pretend to be a guy that's just crunching tape. I'm not getting the all 22 and watching tape. And a lot of guys, whether it's on social media, whether it's in the media, they're saying that they're watching tape and they're either doing it by ignorance and not understanding what exactly goes into that, or they're just flat out lying. If you've ever sat in with someone who's watching tape, it's boring as hell. It takes probably about 5 minutes per play in some instances. Sometimes it takes you 2.5, 3 more time to watch the tape. There's more bad plays than good plays. If you wanted to watch Anthony Richardson's highlights, you're going to be in heaven. But the tape, anyone who has watched the tape, there's a lot of issues. Now people are trying to find the gray area and they're trying to dissect it, but the actual tape itself is not a beautiful thing. So when I hear that from Scout Goodhair, I just don't I find it hard to believe that he would be an Anthony Richardson guy. Um, maybe I'm maybe I'm overstating that a little bit. I just don't really see that. Jerome, appreciate the Superman. Um, you asked the question. The fan base will go into meltdown mode if the Texans draft Will Anderson, but I honestly think that's the right way to go right now. I could be wrong though. Look, if their top quarterback is not on the board, then I could be convinced that that would be the right way to go. Now, Will Anderson's going to have to end up being Nick Bosa or Joey Bosa or something like that. But I could be sold on that. And if you look at what a lot of teams are already doing, the teams that aren't in the top 6, really top 6, it seems like a lot of them are adjusting their strategy right now to do what a lot of Texans fans have asked for, which is maybe postpone trying to get a quarterback for next year when Caleb Williams and Drake May are available. I saw Justin Reed and Matt Miller talking about this. You look at what Tampa Bay has done, you look at what Atlanta looks like they're going to do, and what Washington's going to do. It seems like those 3 teams are focused, whether it's Atlanta bringing in Heineke, whether it's Tampa Bay bringing in Baker Mayfield, even the Raiders with Garoppolo, like some of these other teams, it seems like they're already looking ahead to next year at the quarterback position, and they might be crossing their fingers that maybe a Jalen Carter falls to them or maybe a Tyree Wilson falls to them, and they're already in that mix. So I can definitely see why you think that might be the good move. And let's be honest, when Charlie Casserly took Mario Williams instead of Vince Young, there weren't too many people that were happy with that. There weren't too many people in this town that were upset when the Texans took David Carr instead of Julius Peppers. And we saw how that went down. Um, So I could see I see you I can see where your head's at saying that might be the right reaction, but I also think the best thing that you said, and I think the thing that is most accurate is if it's not a quarterback at 2, I do think people are going to lose their minds. Uh, no doubt about that. Uh, Next thing from Scout Goodhair, James Lifford, that I thought was interesting, and this is kind of the DeMeco impact. Now, he was asked about the possibility of the possibility of hold up. Okay, yeah, here, yeah. Sorry. He was asked about the possible or DeMeco Ryans' impact on the draft board, and how much DeMeco Ryans has changed, how much they changed the draft board when DeMeco came through. Um, and he prefaced it by saying it wasn't that big of a change. They didn't do much different. It said they didn't make very many changes in the scouting department, and it wasn't that much of a change when DeMeco Ryans and his staff came in, when it came to the personnel department and the draft board. But he did say that they adjusted maybe 15 or 20% of the draft board, which to me is a decent amount, isn't it? Like if we look at 20% and how, how many players are typically on a draft board? Couple hundred, maybe. I mean, that would be 40 players. That would be 40% or 40 players, 20% changes on a draft board. Now, I don't know what the standard is, when a coach comes in. Maybe there's time. Maybe Sean Payton came in Denver, and him being the tyrant he is, maybe they changed like half the draft board or 75%. Hell, maybe he ripped the thing up and just put his own draft board out there. But when you tell me that DeMeco Ryans came in and they adjusted the draft board 15, maybe 20%, that tells me that DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caserio and them are kind of, I mean, there's a decent impact of things with DeMeco Ryans. Um, and I guess that's encouraging, because, this is, for lack of a better term, it's DeMeco's team. He's kind of the face of the franchise, but we also don't know, how does DeMeco evaluate players? Like, how good is DeMeco at this? But I guess we're going to find out, because when you're talking about 20%, uh, 20% is, to me, I mean, Lifford knows better than I. He made it seem like it wasn't that big of a deal. But when you say you change 20% of a draft board, that seems like a decent amount, um, to me. Some more comments from Jake talking about running backs. Says he likes A-Chain out of A&M if he drops to the third. Could very well happen. It's kind of a cluster at running back after Gibbs and Bijan Robinson. Who knows when those guys are going to go? A-Chain ran really well, really explosive. He could fall to the third. Goyo talking about Mayer from Notre Dame. He's pretty good, but I don't know about drafting a tight end in the first 2 rounds. Would be smart if the Texans have a lot of because the Texans have a lot of bad luck drafting tight ends. 5 tight ends are probably going in the first 2 rounds, at least 4. So I know that you have the George Kittles who went in the 5th round, the Travis Kelce's who went in third, but these tight ends are going to go relatively early. There's going to be a decent run on them. When the first one goes is to be determined. But if you don't want to draft a tight end in the first 2 rounds, uh, there's a really good top 5 this year. There's still some decent value after, but there's going to be some guys going. I'm not going to even acknowledge a Stetson Bennett in the 4th round question. Anthony Richardson needs Flintstone vitamins. He is the one with the most durability concern of any of the prospects, despite only starting 13 games. Anthony Richardson, I mean, he missed time. I mean, he got hurt dancing, missed a game. He had a concussion. He had a knee surgery. He had hamstring issues. I mean, we equate being small with, injury concerns and all that, but I mean, Bryce Young missed one game. Anthony Richardson missed quite a few, especially for limited time. Um, so maybe Flintstone vitamins. I can't believe those are still a thing. Austin Stevens says we all want a center and we want Cooks gone. Trade Cooks for a center player for the. I want to get into the center position. I was talking about this with Mike Meltzer, and Mike Meltzer said, and I don't disagree to a certain point. Mike Meltzer said that the he doesn't understand Nick Casario's plan at center, which I told Meltz that he was just grasping for straws. I feel like he's just trying to find something to complain about when it comes to something about Nick Caserio, and I actually called him and we talked a little bit, and his overall outlook of the center position isn't necessarily about something that's happened this offseason, but his overall outlook is the entire body of work with Nick Caserio, which kind of piqued my ear a little bit more because I do wonder, and I've said this about the running back position, and I'm hoping I'm not saying this heading into training camp. I don't think they've taken the running back position serious since the Texans have been here. I think it's a position where you need to put energy into getting backs, whether it's in the draft, whether it's high in the draft, whether it's through free agency. You don't just bring guys in and just cross your fingers and hope that they're going to be guys that are going to be able to carry the load significantly. And I feel like the Texans haven't taken the running back position serious the last 2 years. Meltzer says he feels that same way about the center position because you had the Texans in year one of Nick Caserio bring in Justin Britt, and we saw that Justin Britt stunk. He wasn't good. Like, he wasn't good at all in 2021. And then you brought back Justin Britt, and it was more of the same. Like, in training camp, it was blatantly obvious. And I said this at the time. I said it when I was on the field that he was practicing on. I said Justin Britt is moving like Matt Khalil did before the Texans cut him and he ended up retiring. He got hurt in a walkthrough where they weren't even rushing. Like, it was literally just a touch drill, and Justin Britt fell down and he grunted real loud, and it was almost awkward, and they weren't even rushing. And he walked to the sidelines. He looked like Bill Walton. If you see Bill Walton walking these days, and he played one game, it was awful, and he ended up quitting. And now I guess he's on Craigslist or whatever, trying to look for jobs in Kansas City, whatever the hell that was going around the internet. So my question is this, and then you had to play Scott Quesenberry. My question is it possible that maybe Nick Caserio, like the running back position, just doesn't take the center position serious? Is it possible? I think it's possible. I also think it's possible that they like some of these guys in the draft because there are a lot of pretty decent centers in the draft. And the top two names on the market, they ended up re-signing with teams that are better. They're in better situations, and they didn't have to move. Minnesota and San Francisco. Brindle in San Francisco, Bradbury in Minnesota. So those are better situations. Texans, I don't think could have money whipped them. The other thing is this, and I want you to hear me out on this, because I don't think Scott Quesenberry's good. But I do think that Scott Quesenberry is kind of getting a little bit of an undeserved wrath from people who are assuming that the Texans are just going to run it back and make him the starting center. Scott Quesenberry was a guard / center when he came into the league. I think he'd started 10 games before last season. Nobody expected him to be a starting center, and he was awful. He wasn't good. And he didn't really do Kenyon Green any favors. And I've said this multiple times. If you want to get the most out of Kenyon Green, then you need to get a better center by him. But let's be honest. Let's be fair. Let's be fair to Scott Quesenberry. Kenyon Green didn't do him any favors either. Kenyon Green was hurt. Kenyon Green was bad. Kenyon Green was out of shape. So having a left guard play the way that Kenyon Green played last year didn't do Scott Quesenberry any favors either. So let's be fair there and at least acknowledge that Scott Quesenberry, A, wasn't supposed to be the starting center. He was kind of thrown to the wolves. And B, Kenyon Green didn't do him any favors. And let's also realize we're 6 freaking days into free agency. So let's hold off in acting like Nick Caserio doesn't have some sort of plan. Although I do think we got to look at the body of work, and we can fairly say, like Meltz brought up, that the handling of the center has been piss poor at best. Piss poor at best. Marcus, appreciate you, bro. Why get mad for trading up for your guy? If it works, fans will forget. If you settle and it doesn't work, they'll never forget. It's the benefit of hindsight. And sometimes moves are just made, and sometimes you can criticize them down the line. But I always try to be fair when it comes to that. For example, like the DeMeco Ryans hire, like let's say DeMeco Ryans is a disaster, and 3 years from now, we're looking back and saying, damn, it didn't work out. I wouldn't look back at that and say DeMeco Ryans was a bad decision. Now, if Derek Stingley ends up being a disappointment and Sauce Gardner ends up being really, really good, I think then you could say that was a bad decision, because there was like a 50% split, right? There was like a 50%. This group of people wanted Sauce. This group of people wanted Stingley. And I think you can go back and look at that. But sometimes you just make a decision, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It's kind of a crapshoot. Man, y'all are arguing like crazy about Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. I absolutely love this. In the private chat, a lot of talk about Bryce Young, his size. That seems to be the default. A lot of talk about CJ Stroud, et cetera. A lot of people want to talk about that. Brown Chubby Bear bringing up the center. He says he agrees with Mike 100%. Been saying this since training camp last year, the center position. Yeah, so, Britt was awful. And I think that is something that Nick Caserio is going to have to figure out is let's start evaluating guys and not bringing them back for another year. I mean, I think that's like Rex Burkhead. You saw, I mean, he had a decent year for what you got. You can still do better. Like bringing back the Kamu Grugier-Hills, the Brits, the Rex Burkheads. That's not necessarily something that you want to do. Joe Blue, appreciate you. He asks, center in the draft or trade, call Bucks or Ryan Jensen. They're gonna do both. Like I think they're gonna do both when it comes to the center. I don't think you have to worry about it. They'll figure it out at center. You could have a lot bigger issues than center. The Bryce Young, CJ Stroud stuff. We'll go to another Bryce Young, CJ Stroud question. The Brand Snipe D says BY has a weak arm. Teams will scheme to take away the middle of the field, forcing Young to beat him deep, which we don't do because he can't push the ball downfield. Give it 8 weeks and fans will be pissed. That's a lie. Like that like if you're gonna say something like about the guy, that's a lie. Like that's just not true. There was actually an article, and I think Brown Chubby Bear actually retweeted it. I think I liked it. Bryce Young's really good in the middle of the field, which is something that you're not supposed to be if your size is an issue. But to say he has a weak arm and to imagine like say that teams are going to force him to do that, they're going to do that with everybody. Like, and he can't push the ball downfield. That's just a flat out lie. That's just not true. Like, we're just like, if you don't like Bryce, that's fine. If you don't like CJ, that's fine. But that's just a lie. Like that's just a flat out lie. So yeah, I I don't know why. Why are people just making stuff up? That's not true. That's just flat out not true. Jo, shout out to Jo. Says Nick chose Stingley's tools over Sauce's production. We shouldn't discount the possibility of the Texans selecting AR using the same approach. I disagree with you on that. I think he chose, first of all, Derek Stingley was very productive. He had arguably the best year that an LSU corner has ever had, and that's DBU. So, well, outside of Tyrann Mathieu, I'll say a LSU corner. In our lifetime, Tyrann could have easily won the Heisman. Sting and I don't know that Stingley's tools were that much better than Sauce's. I actually think Sauce had pretty good tools as well. They both were pretty productive players. So I don't at all like even see the comparison between Derek Stingley and Anthony Richardson like in any way, shape, or form. As far as that. Chris says Alabama's O-line isn't as good as you think it is. It wasn't very good. It's big, but they did not perform very well. They look confused. They honestly look like a Texans offensive line with Bill O'Brien. And imagine who their offensive coordinator was. It was Bill O'Brien. They didn't play as well at all. D. Davis says we need a good middle linebacker. We need linebackers, period. Which I think they're going to figure something out with that situation. But they need linebackers, period. You can't have Christian Kirksey. I like Cashman. I think maybe he should probably get a little bit more snaps, but you don't want him playing like significant time. They need backers, period. I think Christian Harris is going to be a mofo for DeMeco Ryans, but they need linebackers, period. So I'm absolutely with you on that. Texas Mike, what's your thought on Schefter saying Carolina is leaning towards Bryce? Did he really say that? Because what's happened to Adam Schefter and what's happened to a lot of NFL insiders is they've started just doing favors for people. And they speak out of both ends because what I heard from Schefter, I know the headline led that way, but he compared Bryce Young to Mac Jones when San Francisco traded up and said that he was the front runner and they ended up going with Trey Lance. So was he really saying that Bryce Young is the guy or not? Because they didn't take Mac Jones. Is he saying they're leaning somewhere else? What happens with Schefter, what happens with a lot of these guys, and Schefter's still the best NFL insider, but the lower level guys do it even worse. And you'll see them kind of telegraph it. You'll see them like start like gassing up like a random player. And it's like, okay, you're doing this for his agent. You can see that locally more so. But Adam Schefter basically said that they could take anyone. And I wonder if he's just trying to maintain the good relationship with the new Carolina regime. Because I'd listened to it and I didn't really get that they were leaning towards Bryce with that clip. I think he said Bryce was the early favorite and then something changed and then he kind of tried to backtrack and then he got pushed on it and he was there. I kind of thought Adam Schefter was just kind of talking out of both ends. Speaking of Bryce and CJ, more analysis here. Mr. Robot, CJ has a strong arm. Bryce has a decent arm. Bryce is more mobile. CJ is slightly more accurate in some throws. Bryce and others. Bryce can throw on the run better. I think that's good analysis. And I think CJ has the potential to do a lot of things better than what he did at Ohio State. But I think that's fair analysis. No doubt. But yeah, Shefty, I agree. I agree with Bevo. I think Shefty's kind of a mouthpiece. It's kind of gotten a little bit interesting. Like it's almost like, okay, like did you see the report from Jeremy Fowler where Jeremy Fowler said, and this was like this is probably the worst report of the offseason. There's going to be a lot where Jeremy Fowler said, the Carolina Panthers, according to a source, could take Bryce Young, they could take C.J. Stroud, they could take Anthony Richardson, or they could take Will Levis. Come on, man. Like, and they also might trade. Hilarious. Marcus asks, does hiring DeMeco give Caserio more breathing room with ownership? Um, it depends if DeMeco likes working with him. As much as they like to work together right now, I do think that if let's say 2 years from now, DeMeco Ryans, if Cal and Hannah pull him into their office and they're talking, and DeMeco says, "Man, I just don't know about Nick. I don't know." Um, then I think that it's going to be DeMeco's call. Um, what's going to give Nick more trust with ownership? And I don't think ownership is ever going to trust anyone blindly again. And I don't think it was all the current regime, like Cal and Hannah's 100% ship until recently. But I don't think they're going to blindly trust anyone ever again, which is a good thing because Cal's biggest mistake has been blindly trusting people. But I think DeMeco has the longer shelf life of those two guys. This is a good question. Cole with a K. What's your overall grade of Nick Caserio's free agency so far, and how many moves do you think we have left? Right now, they don't have money to spend. They can change that very quickly. I like the approach. I like the 2-year deals. And I hear people saying, well, you don't give 2-year deals. Okay. Do you know how NFL contracts work? Like Byron Jones was the prize signing a few years ago with Miami. He was gone after 3 years. So you're giving guys 2-year deals. You got to crawl before you walk. You're improving the roster, and I like this approach. I think they've done a good job. I think they've got improvement in the secondary. I think they've got improvement on the D line. They've got improvement at wide receiver. They improved the offensive line. I don't know what more you would want him to do. I like this approach. Now, if this were the approach in 2 years, let's say they were a player away or something and we're doing this, it would be different, but I think it's a fluid process with where they're at right now. So if I had to grade it, I would give it a B. I'm not going to give it an A because they haven't gotten the center yet, but sometimes things don't go according to plan, and I still think there's plenty of time to get the center. Denzel says, "Why can't you like two guys though? It's pretty much simple. Get the best one available." You can. I'm not I'm not like the verdict on anything, and anyone that comes in here knows that I'm not, I'll state my opinion firmly, but I'm far from the verdict, and when I'm wrong, I have no problem admitting I have no problem cussing and discussing. Um, I just think at the quarterback position, there's so much that goes into it. There's so much of an investment. There's so much, especially at this point. Like if you were a quarterback away, then maybe. Like if the Jets had, let's say the Jets didn't get Aaron Rodgers and then they just wanted to go to Derek Carr, regardless of if they think Rodgers is a better player, that would be the right approach because they're a quarterback away. But if you're the Texans, and I don't believe in this, like you're a blank away, but if you're the Texans though, and you're trying to build a roster and you maybe look at next year and say, we like these quarterbacks a little bit better than this one. If you have one quarterback here and then one quarterback here, do you really want to go down here at the sake of maybe getting something elite? In other words, do you go to the Ryan Tannehill instead of taking the Nick Bosa? So do you go to like the quality starting quarterback instead of taking like the elite defensive player? Now, if you're a team that feels that you're close, then maybe you do. But I just feel like it's a little bit different than doing it with a wide receiver, if that makes sense. It might not make sense to you. It makes sense to me. But I've been wrong before, and I appreciate the question. Cole asking, following up on the Nick Caserio approach, agreed. You don't really want to give out big long-term contracts when 3/4 of the deal would be on a rebuilding, non-contending team. I agree. And I don't have like a specific name that I think they should get. Jo asking thoughts on Darnell Washington at 33. I think he'd be a versatile inline tight end for the whole the whole scheme. Brown Chubby Bear saying the same thing. I take Darnell Washington and skip on a wide receiver until the later rounds. So you saying taking Darnell Washington at 12? Are you saying take him at 33, BCB? I mean, I like Washington. I think it's going to come down to how good teams think he can catch. A lot of unrealized potential there, potentially some unrealized potential because you do have Bowers there and you do have all the other stuff going on at Georgia, but there's a lot of really good tight ends. I could see Washington going to the 3rd round, honestly. Although that size is going to be hard for people to pass on. The other thing is, man, just look like such a badass when you're rocking number 0 looking that big. Almost looks like a damn creative player. But I like Washington. I like Kincaid. I like Mayer. I like the kid out of Oregon State. I like a lot of these tight ends. 33, I don't know. You're going to have to tell me who else is there at 33 if you're going to take Washington. Because if you're telling me you're taking Washington instead of Gibbs, or you're taking Washington instead of the center, the top center, if you're taking Washington instead of, some of the other stuff that could be there, it's going to be tough. But I don't know. Seems pretty wild. What's the word on Mechie? Is he healthy, in football shape, or recovered? Yeah, he's looking good. He's working out. They said he's at the facility a lot. I forgot who said it. But football shape, I don't know how he would get in football shape. How do you get in football shape right now? I think he'll be trying to get into football shape, recovering from the ACL and recovering from the leukemia. So we'll see. Tubby says Darnell Washington or Gibbs at 33. I'm taking Gibbs in that situation. Terry asking what happened to Perriman. I don't know. Last I heard, he was here. It was a multiple day visit, and since then, haven't heard much. So who knows? Maybe they're trying to figure a deal out. Maybe they didn't like the physical. Just haven't heard much on him. Brown Chubby Bear. So he's saying Washington at 33. Brown Chubby Bear. I'm so glad, man. His mock draft's gonna suck. Don't tell him I said that. Brown Chubby Bear's mock drafts kind of suck. Pretty bad. Texas Mike, Casario should have been more aggressive in free agency. I understand you don't want to sign everyone to long contracts, but damn, we beat every team in our division. LFG. I don't know. I mean, I thought he was pretty aggressive. I mean, they spent their money. They added a lot of players. I don't know what more he wanted to do. And you are right, though. You bring up a really good point, Mike. The rest of the division hadn't done a damn thing. Now, maybe they didn't have to do as much, but the rest of the division didn't do a damn thing. When it came to that. Jaden Wilson, when it comes to pick 12, should we go wide receiver or help the D line? I think we should go wide receiver because we need the most, blah, blah, blah. Trade Cooks. Cooks will be traded. Smith and Jigba is there. It's going to be hard to pass up. I bet they like Addison too. I'm starting to think Casario is going to like Addison. I really, really am. Starting to believe that. People disagreeing on the free agency thing. None your business says keep CJ and any Mulligetta clients away from Houston. There's enough of a pattern of them demanding trades after a few seasons just to try to get more money leveraging teams against each other. Yeah, I mean, there have been, I think you're probably alluding to Deshaun. You're probably alluding to Jalen Ramsey. There has been a pattern of that. I would not exclude Mulligetta clients, although it does seem like he's kind of got a little bit of bad boy Diddy to him where he kind of wants to be up in the video, kind of wants to be like a little bit of a star. I saw someone sent me a video of and I think he's kind of in the camp-ish, Quincy Avery. Quincy Avery put out, like, some video, and it was like, "A lot of people ask, uh, what a day in the life my life is like. Uh, well, here's a little bit of a snippet." And he put like a video of him like flying on a plane to uh Cleveland and working out, and then flying to Baltimore working or flying and working out again, and then doing a radio show. And he's like, "This is what a day in the life is." First of all, that weak ass radio show is one day a week. It's only on Thursdays. So that's not every day. Second of all, you're not hopping on a plane and flying cross country every single day. He tried to present that like as that's like the everyday grind for him. Thought that was a little bit funny. Maybe I went a little bit off track, but I just thought it was hilarious. People, first of all, who's asking like, what's every day like for you? One person. Um, but he put that up, and it was like, uh, it was clearly one of his busiest days, and he does it, and then he does the show, and he's like, now I got my show here. Yeah, it's once a week, dude. It's like a 40-minute once a week thing. Rise and grind. But yeah, I don't think you can exclude Mulugeta and Quincy clients, but I do think that there is some potential to where some people are probably a little bit sour on them at times, but they're professionals. They'll get the job done. Austin Stevens, most of the time, especially David's fine. Austin says the Colts look like they're going to clear a lot of cap right now. Lamar incoming. I'll take Ryan Kelly off their hands. Ryan Kelly would be a nice get. Ben Jones would be a nice get as a veteran center. Don't know what the price would be. Doubt it would be too high for Ryan Kelly. If the Colts went for Lamar, okay, that would be cool. I don't think it would like be the end of the world, because what kind of team are they going to surround him with? Kind of seems like the story when it comes to Lamar. Zach says he'll lose his mind if they don't get Bijan. So you're hoping he slides to 12 and the Texans get that. Dead shred. Can't tell if you're being serious. Keenum with weapons and a good O line would work out well if our rookie QB needs some time to learn the offense and get NFL ready. Okay, so you're just talking about Keenum starting a couple of games and holding it down. Yeah, I wouldn't love that, but all right. We need a good middle linebacker. There's no doubt. The Panthers are drafting CJ Stroud. You don't give up draft capital for AR-15 or Will Levis. Agree with that. If they took Bryce Young, it wouldn't shock me, but I do agree you don't trade up for AR-15 or Levis. Can agree with that. Mr. Robot says these dudes who don't want to take a quarterback are funny. They act like a team who has a top pick to us, especially if they need a quarterback. Your next year get a quarterback plan doesn't work. It doesn't work a lot of the times, but the get a quarterback now plan doesn't work either. So there's really like when it comes to quarterbacks, I did it on the show and I did it here. I think it's 14 quarterbacks who've been drafted in the top 5 since Andrew Luck. There's only 3 that are maybe franchise guys, and that's Burrow, Lawrence, and maybe Kyler Murray, depending on how you feel about him. And I feel like a lot of people don't feel great about him. But if you look at Bortles, Goff, Wentz, Mariota, Winston, Bisky, Lance, Wilson, and some other guys, like there's no guarantee there either. So sometimes when you rush it, you get in just as much trouble. So I don't disagree, like wait on a quarterback. It is a plan that, has a high success rate, but let's just get a quarterback now doesn't either. It's really, really hard to get quarterbacks. Like really, 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 really hard. Like extremely hard. So I feel you, but also I can understand uh, both points of view on that. Mike B. Casario is also very good at getting running backs in the draft at the later rounds. It's not just Damian talking about, I guess you're saying Dion Lewis, Sony Michelle. Michelle was a first round pick. That's not quite later in the draft. And Damian Harris was a third round pick. He was the pick after the the water polo tight end. So yeah, they have New England has done a good job of finding running backs to you know maximize what their skills are. But Sony Michel, they already had a lot of running backs, and Sony Michel was a first round pick. So I don't I don't know that those are the best examples um, of finding guys, but there are plenty of examples of New England doing that. Oh yeah, Herbert and Tua. Tua was actually Herbert was the sixth pick, and Tua was there. So it depends. Do you if you think Tua is a thank you for helping me out there, JMO. If you do you think Tua is a franchise quarterback? I'd say that's kind of with the Kyler thing, the TBD. Herbert, I said top five. Herbert was sixth. Um, so you have that ER. Not a fan of Quentin Johnston. I'd rather draft JSN, Addison, or Christian Gonzalez at 12. Yeah, I like JSN and Addison more than Quentin Johnston. Although Seth Payne, who I respect a lot, he likes Quentin Johnston a lot more than I do. I don't think he's consistent. I don't think he's going to be as explosive at the next level, and I just don't think it. I don't think he projects to be as good as Addison or Smith and Jigba. That's one of the more debated players is Quentin Johnston, and there's a lot of difference on him. Cyborn, thoughts on Marvin Harrison Jr.? He's awesome. That's the only thought that anyone should have about him. Unsure if the Texans will be in place to take him next year, but can always trade up. Super high on him. I don't know anyone that's not. Uh, I mean, people are going to be talking about him being 1-1, even with Caleb Williams and Drake. Yeah. I mean, I don't. I've yet to find anyone who doesn't think that Marvin Harrison Jr. is effing awesome. God, he looks like his dad too, doesn't he? Um, Probably a little bit more explosive, but runs routes the same way. Got the same hands, same awareness, all that. Jaden Wilson, Deuce Vaughn, and Damian Pierce would be wild. Deuce Vaughn, I do wonder when he's going to bump down. Elbert, Landry, you're overthinking it. Both Young and Stroud look solid to be drafted at number 2. I'll always be guilty of overthinking things. I think sometimes it's underthought though, the quarterback position. I think we've seen it in 98 when the Cardinals traded up to or the Cardinals traded with the Chargers so the Chargers could take pick 2 because it was either Peyton or Ryan Leaf. I think we saw it with the Jets when they took the quarterback at 2. San Francisco traded up to 3, and they basically said, and this is a smart franchise that's able to coach guys up. They basically said, we like these quarterbacks, so whichever one falls to us at 3, we'll be good. And do you think Trey Lance is going to warrant the trade that they made? I don't. So yeah, I might be overthinking it. I think sometimes teams kind of underthink it. What round is Tank Dell gonna go? Praying he falls to day 3. He'd be an awesome second wide receiver pick. I think Tank could go day 2, second or third, maybe late second, third. Although you never know. Guys in that range can fall, but a lot of people like Tank here for obvious reasons. There is a lot to like, and that those wide receivers, when you start talking about some of those guys, it kind of gets a little bit interesting when it comes to the wide receivers, and there's a lot of depth. And speaking of U of H, we're going to get a little Cougs action today. Already got Kansas and Arkansas on the screen. Got my horns going against Penn State, who I am absolutely terrified of. But it's March. Historically speaking, only one of the top 2 quarterbacks in a draft will be successful. And if that, I mean, sometimes not even that. So I think you're absolutely right, Gregory. Historically speaking, I mean, there's usually a better chance. There's a much better chance that none of the quarterbacks will be franchise quarterbacks taken in the first round than there is that 2 will. And that's why I started this off asking the question, is it possible to really like both of those the same? So, but you're absolutely uh, correct. Texans, Mike, have you seen any examples of the new uniforms? No, I didn't. I was at the presentation. I said this the day that it happened, and I kind of got in like some media types accused me of being kind of a jackass for the rant I went on the air for it, which happens in the loop 10 to 2 Central, Sports Radio 610, Odyssey app, official home of the Texans. Um, they didn't show us any uniforms, and it felt like it felt kind of like there were some media types that were kind of trying to present it as they saw like some new uniforms that the Texans were going to wear. And I just thought, y'all know how I am with the audience, like whether it's talking about the team, whether it's criticizing players and coaches, maybe this is kind of like a keeping it real goes wrong factor, but I just have to be honest with you people because I know what it's like. Like that's what I take pride in. Like I used to ride around in the car with my dad or whatever when he'd pick me up and I'd be staying with him for the weekend. And it would be like, did you hear what this guy said? And you always like spotted out the fraud radio guys. And sometimes it's a keep it real goes wrong thing, but I always try to be honest with the audience. They didn't show us any effing uniforms. Like there were some people in the media that tried to, oh, you're going to be really pleased with this. Oh, check this out. They're fire. I swear to God, they didn't show us any effing uniforms. Like they showed like some colors, some ideas. The only uniforms that we saw were like ones that have been photoshopped. And y'all have seen these online, like the old like the Houston blue uniforms and stuff like that. They did say they're going to have new uniforms this time next year around the draft. They did say that they want the uniforms to symbolize more of the city instead of like the old thing. They're not going to change. I don't think they're going to change the logo. So they're going to keep the tradition and kind of mix it in. They haven't changed their uniforms the whole time, but there were no effing uniforms, man. Like there were no uniforms. Like I don't know. Like some people, I think people just wanted to feel like exclusive or something. Oh my God, you won't believe what we saw. Like, I hate when people say, well, I heard this, but I can't say it to my audience. Then why are you bringing it up, jackass? Like, what kind of, what is that? Like, if I heard something and like when Jack Easterby told me everything, like all that crap, I went on the air immediately and I told y'all what he said. And then we revisited it afterwards. But if I ever get like some information and I can't tell you, maybe I can help form my opinion based on that. But what kind of jackass would I be if I was talking to the audience and I said, well, I know this, but I can't say it? What is that? Like, what is that? Like, why even bring it up? There were no uniforms. I say all that and I go on my little tangents that I often go on. There were no uniforms. I promise you. There were none. I do think they're gonna mix in the tradition. And I think it's gonna be a little bit more cool. The problem with Texan stuff has been, and I've always said this, you can't wear it out. Like I'm wearing this Astros hat right now, and it's like, okay, that's a cool hat. You could wear that out, right? Like I could go to the bar right now, get some wings, watch a game. I could rock this, and you could be like, damn, that's a cool hat. You could wear it casual. With that Texans generic ass whack logo with the polarizing red and blue and stuff, you ain't rocking that to the damn club. You ain't rocking that to the guys' night when wifey's watching the kids. And I think they're gonna try to get to that point where you still have the tradition and figure that out. But there weren't any freaking uniforms. I'm telling you, there weren't. So no, I didn't see any uniforms. I heard them say that they're going to try to be a little bit more creative. I know they're going to sprinkle in some H-Town flair. It's going to have some old stuff, but any of these guys who try to act like they saw something just state of the art are lying. And maybe just to look cooler. Nobody asks. The Titans are going to wear the old Orly uniforms in a game next year. Yes. What if they do that against the Texans? That would be funny. Frank's asking, how would I grade the new jerseys? There was no jerseys. There were no jerseys. Uh, so I don't grade it at all. Not even a little bit. So we'll see what happens there. Alex says that Callahan should buy the Oiler rights from the Adams family and bring. They're not selling it. The Adams family is obsessed with it. Um, they're like incredibly obsessed with the Oilers stuff. And honestly, the McNairs want their own little flavor. Now they've got to be open to expanding the flavor. You got to expand the flavor. Like you can start out with like I'm sure Bluebell had some awesome vanilla when it first came out. Vanilla gets old though. You got to get the Rocky Road. You got to get the caramel pecan fudge. I think that was called back when Bluebell had all their crap, which sucked because I thought it was the best. You got to get some strawberry. You got to sprinkle in that flavors, and you can still have the foundation, the homemade vanilla, but you can't just let it be the vanilla. So they got their identity. They're going to expand it. They're like Bluebell did with the vanilla. They're going to figure it out. Rick says he can rock the Texans gear out. You just got to be flying. Come on, man. What, Rick? Hit me up on Twitter at Landry Locker. Show me one picture of you going to the club and looking appropriate or something like that, rocking the Texans gear of right now. You ain't rocking that. Come on, man. Gregory, I was a season ticket holder with the Oilers. Shout out to you. Columbia blue uniforms because the owner Bud Adams was a graduate of Johns Hopkins, who were the Toronto Blue Jays. I actually think there's some history, more history there. I know Bud Adams kind of tried to claim that color. That color has been a part of Houston for years. If you go, the road signs used to be Columbia blue back in the day. And that's going back to, I think, even like I don't want to say a year because I suck at history. My mom's probably ashamed of me because she's a history teacher. But if you go back and look at like the early history of the Houston road signs, they were actually that color. Bud's trying to claim it, and I think he's kind of rewriting the history. And I think it's cute that he likes to do that. But I think there's actually like a little bit more history to that. Murray asks, why are you wearing headphones? Is it just a broadcasting habit or something else? See, sometimes I rock them here. Sometimes I don't. And these are like the raggedy ass headphones. I decided to get them because the cord is a little bit shorter. It is a broadcasting habit, but the thing about this, and this is probably TMI, but we're kind of at the Q&A thing here. I had to switch over to the Firefox browser from the Microsoft Edge. And sometimes Firefox, because it's not my default browser, it doesn't use I use a Rodecaster to broadcast. It doesn't use the actual Rodecaster audio at times as a default. So it's like a good thing to hear. But it is kind of weird. Like, I do feel kind of naked because from 10 to 2, I'm rocking the headphones. So sometimes when you're talking, you do that. And it also this sounds weird. I don't like the sound of my own voice. So this kind of allows me to not have to hear it. That's one of the hardest things. If there's any like aspiring radio guys or anything like that, then listening to yourself is very important, but listening to yourself can absolutely suck. It can be cringeworthy at times, some more than others, probably mine at the highest, as I think a lot of you can probably attest to. If the Texans were to take Stroud at number 2, this is Cyborn, and JSN at 12, do you think they could be the next Burrow Chase duo? Might need a better offensive mind than Slowick, but it would be super exciting. We don't know what Bobby Slowick's going to be. I think there's some potential. I do think Jamar Chase is a decent. I don't think a lot of people realize this because they don't play the same, but they're the same size. Smith and Jigba and Chase are the same exact size. Same height, all that. I don't think people realize that, but they are. But Burrow Chase, I don't know. I do hear some people try to compare Stroud to Burrow. But who knows? Landry would be a perfect person to have the District of Columbia, if only because I want to pay to hear him talk to those politicians. I mean, I don't talk to any politicians. Can't stand them. But I appreciate all of the questions. We got some. I did this at 5 today because this is a hell of a day of college basketball. We got the Hogs getting close. We got the Cougs. Who do I got in the Usman? Give me him. I think he's going to win. I'm kind of I'm like a ignorant UFC fan. I like Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz is always going to be my dog. I got a Nate Diaz shirt. Nate Diaz doesn't have to win a fight to win a fight. So I'm a Nate Diaz guy. But I think Usman's gonna win. But I mean that's kind of a gutless pick, but who knows? Sometimes I make gutless picks. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Let's enjoy the college basketball. Probably drop something tomorrow. Be sure to when you leave here, like, subscribe. We're all in this together. I appreciate everyone for coming through. Appreciate everyone for riding along with this Texans thing. We're less than 6 weeks away from the draft. Free agency is unfolding, and it's good times. Shoot, we're less than 2 weeks away from the Astros too. Best squad in town. So I don't want to bury the lead there. No matter what happens with the Texans, I appreciate everyone for coming through. Appreciate the supers and whatnot. When it comes to this, though, we are all in this together. Have a good one, peeps.